Okay, we're continuing now with Best of the West, something like part 16 or something, in Art, Music, and Movies by me, Pete Rogers. We're on chapter 3. This is a quote by Goethe, the greatest of the German writers, sort of like the Shakespeare of Germany. He said, "Of all the peoples, the ancient Greeks had the best vision for the dream of what life can be." Yep, that's true until Christianity came along. Daniel Robinson, "The goal of the ancient Greeks was personal perfection, not the control of people." Almost every other country, since the beginning of the history of recorded time, it's always been about controlling all the proles and beating the crap out of them if they disobey. That's why all the other old cultures, they all stink, okay? Almost nothing happens because some tyrant says, "Do as I say or I'll kick your butt." That's pretty much how most countries have been since, again, the beginning of recorded history. Other philosophical schools tended to force the students to follow an established doctrine, and new ideas were labeled as heresy. Okay, now we're going to read, this is a quote from Alan Bloom from The Closing of the American Mind. "But if these students were really to learn something of the minds of these non-Western cultures, which they do not, they would find that each and every one of these cultures is ethnocentric. And all of them think their way is the best way and all others are inferior. Only in the Western nations, those influenced by Greek philosophy, is there some willingness to doubt the identification of the good with one's way." Yeah, Christianity's the best. It says everybody's welcome, we're all equal in the eyes of God, let's just do the best we can. Whereas in the other places, it's like, you're not one of us, go screw yourself. You know, they even have a name like in a Muslim country. If you're not a Muslim, you're a dhimmi. And that means, you know, you're a second-class citizen. In the Indian country, they got a caste system. And if you're an untouchable, you're a toilet cleaner for life, okay? And Catholicism is better than Protestantism. But there are some good Protestants, and they have some good pastors. That is true. But anyways, you have the best chance for everybody to have the best opportunity in a Christian country. That's why everybody wants to move to the Christian countries, and then they're all agreeing to destroy them, okay? All right, and he says the reason for closedness or ethnocentrism is clear. Men must love and be loyal to their families and their people in order to preserve them. Only if they think their own things are good will they rest content with them. A father must prefer his child to other children, a citizen his country to others. That is why there are myths to justify these attachments. But with Christianity, it's not a myth. Our cultures and our countries are better. They just are. Look at our art, literature, music, architecture, charities, universities. Why is it that students feel they have to come from another country to come to the United States University, and the United States universities stink compared to how they used to be? They used to be meritocracy for excellence. Now they're like these lefty pinko commie, you know, mediocre pieces of crap, all right? Atheistic pieces of crap. Okay, Arthur Koestler on Originality. "Some of the greatest discoveries consist mainly in clearing away of the psychological roadblocks which obstruct the approach to reality, which is why post factum they appear so obvious." Yeah, things seem simple because you had to get past all those roadblocks. You know, Copernicus' heliocentric theory seems simple to us, but at the time he had to get past all this Ptolemaic minutia, okay? All right, this is Daniel Robinson, the philosophic guy. He said, "The ancient Greeks believed that harmonious music was harmonious for the soul and bad music was bad for the soul. The 1800s version of that was, music when healthy is the teacher of perfect order and when depraved is the teacher of perfect disorder," John Ruskin. And I agree. It's like if you want to be smart, don't ever listen to beat music, except maybe when you're lifting weights. It can make you feel strong when you're lifting weights, but other than that, it just makes you stupid. Anything that's got a pulsating beat, boom, 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 it just pushes a thought out of your brain. If you want to be smart, you spend a lot of time thinking, even when you're not doing anything. You're rolling ideas around in your head, and that makes you more sophisticated and articulate. Okay. Johann Fichte on the German educational system. It was laid down, or actually, I think this is Bertrand Russell talking about him. Bertrand Russell. And Bertrand Russell is another one of these, you know, billionaires who believes that the world needs to reduce its population and bring back slavery. Yet he was hailed in the universities as a good role model and teacher, okay? The guy basically wants, you know, to control the numbers of the proles, okay? But here's what he has to say. Johann Fichte, German philosopher of the 1800s. And what happened in Germany, by the way, is they got their butt kicked by the French, the Battle of Jena, like in 1806. So they felt they had to redo their military, make the soldiers more obedient. Okay? And he said the aim of education should be to destroy free will. so that pupils after they have left school will be incapable the rest of their lives of thinking or acting individually in any way other than their schoolmasters would have wished. They will be convinced that snow is black. Snow is black. And actually, most people are pretty much like that. I've seen that because I'm old enough, I'm 62, to see total shifts in value judgments and assessments, okay? Children will be, as in Plato's Republic, taken from their mothers and reared by professional nurses. Gradually, by selective breeding, the congenital differences between the rulers and the ruled will increase until they become almost a different species. And that's already happening right now. I call that the queen bee strategy. So if you're a rich person, you don't send your kid to some scumbag public school. You send them to a private school, or you homeschool them. Homeschool kids are way more educated and sophisticated than kids that go to public school. Public school kids are, morons for the most part, okay? Most of, dyslexia off the charts, attention deficit off the charts, antisocial personality disorder off the charts, illiteracy, all the bad stuff happens in the public schools. If you have any choice at all, don't let your kid go to a public school. So the rich guy, their kid's not drinking tap water full of aluminum and fluoride and estrogenic feminizing chemicals. Their kid's drinking reverse osmosis water, okay? They have an air purifier in their house, all right? They only eat organic, okay? And the more plants, the better, okay? Whereas, the typical poor person, they're drinking tap water, they're eating processed food, they're going to some stupid, retarded public school. Okay, so they're hanging around with kids that are having sex in 6th grade, 7th grade. They're smoking pot, doing drugs. Okay, so their potential, they're going to be way below their potential compared to the kid he sent to a prep school. He hangs around with rich kids, sophisticated kids. They send him for free internship. The poor kid, he needs money. He has to go in some crap job to make a little bit of money where he gets exposed to toxic chemicals and other bad things. The rich kid, he ain't going to do that. He's going to go for a free internship where he has good mentorship to develop him to be a future leader rather than a poor minimum wage chump. Okay, so anyways, that's what I call queen bee strategy, because the queen bee ate royal jelly to become a queen, whereas all the drones, they eat regular food. Okay. Bertrand Russell continues. He says, the social psychologists of the future will have a number of classes of school children on whom they will try different methods of producing an unshakable conviction that snow is black. Various results will soon be arrived at. First, that the influence of the home is obstructive. Second, that not much can be done unless schooling indoctrination begins before the age of 10. Third, that the verses set to music and repeatedly intoned are very effective. That's also why they want to get the kids into preschool, to get them away from their parents so they stop learning all this religion stuff and good behavior and reading with phonics. No. They want to get them into the preschool where they can condition them to care more about social skills with kids their own age than being around their older siblings and parents and learning the Bible stories and stuff that's going to strengthen them, amplify their academic ability. No. They want them to be atheists, to hate their parents, to turn against their parents, and in a sense to turn against themselves by accepting modernism. Okay, the opinion that snow is white must be held to show a morbid taste for eccentricity. So if you use your common sense, you will be ostracized. You will be mocked. If you're a conformist dummy, that will be rewarded. It is for the future scientists to make these maxims precise and discover exactly how much it costs per head to make children believe that snow is black, and how much less it would cost to make them believe it is gray. Okay, so the modern world is complicated. If you want to learn, a good thing to do too for young people is read biographies. That's about some of the highest yield reading. Read the biography of Ben Franklin. That'll teach you something, okay? And there's a lot of other great books, but biographies, you often get valuable data. Now, some people say, biographies, autobiographies are overrated because they leave out the humiliating stuff. And there's some truth in that. But you still get a lot of valuable stuff out of that. People who don't read, they're real gullible and they're real ignorant. And then they become embarrassed about their ignorance, so they even hush up more. And, the spectrum between what people know, it's tremendous. Between what a well-educated, knowledgeable, thoughtful person with ongoing reading knows. And Aristotle used to be real harsh. He said it's like the difference between the living and the dead. They don't know almost anything. They're really kind of helpless, okay? All right, Hilaire Baroque, he said, it has been discovered that with a dull urban population, all formed under a mechanical system of state education, a suggestion or a command, however senseless and unreasoned, will be obeyed if sufficiently repeated. That's what I've seen too. People hear something repeated a lot, they think it's true. The loss of religion makes them weak, makes them hedonistic. They're very easy to control. The stupider the person, the more they believe what you tell them. Fyodor Dostoevsky from Brothers Karamazov, if God is dead, then everything is permitted. And then again from the Grand Inquisitor chapter, we shall convince men that they can only become free when they have given up their freedom. In the end, they will lay their freedom at our feet and say, make us your slaves, but feed us. Yeah. It's the best chapter ever in any book ever written, the Grand Inquisitor chapter of Brothers Karamazov. Okay, let's scroll this up a little bit. Malcolm Muggeridge quote here. I'm going to get back into the pictures and all that stuff in a moment, but I start out with a story or a couple quotes at the beginning of each chapter. Okay, Malcolm Muggeridge quote. He's a guy, he was an English sort of BBC commentator, historian guy, and then he went to Russia around the 1930s, and it was supposed to be, it was being hailed. Everybody thought Russia's this great successful place, America's a screw up with the Great Depression. We need to be more like the Soviets. Socialism is the future. And the only thing is, when he would get away from the main part of the field guide, okay, the field trip, he would see mass murder of the proles, all these people starving to death, show trials, and he's like, holy crap, this isn't progress, this is a nightmare, this is evil barbarism. Okay, so here's Malcolm Muggeridge. It has been said that when human beings stop believing in God, they believe in nothing. The truth is much worse, they believe in anything. So the final conclusion would surely be that whereas other civilizations had been brought down by attacks of barbarians from without, ours had the unique distinction of training its own destroyers at its own educational institutions and providing them with facilities for propagating their destructive ideology far and wide, all at the public expense. Thus did Western man decide to abolish himself, creating his own boredom out of his own affluence, his own vulnerability out of his own strength, his own impotence out of his own erotomania, letting himself and the trumpet be the trumpet that brought the walls of his own city tumbling down, having convinced himself that he was too numerous, labored with pill and scalpel to make himself fewer. Until at last, having educated himself into imbecility and polluted and drugged himself into stupefaction, he keeled over a weary, battered old brontosaurus and became extinct. Malcolm Muggeridge from Vintage Muggeridge, Religion and Society. Yeah, Muggeridge told the truth of what's happening. Okay. Now we'll see again a couple paintings and stuff. So here's the number 3 best painting by Johann Kraft. I love this painting. This is Faust on Easter Morning by Johann Kraft. So basically Faust, coming from the poem by Goethe, and it's a traditional legends. A couple of people have made different versions of it. He basically felt that he was a phony. He had all the titles of a credentialed academic, but he knew he really didn't know almost anything useful. He was thinking about committing suicide. He had the poison in his cup, and then he looked out the window and he saw the church on Easter morning, the happy families going to church, and he's like, gee, I spent all my time just in the libraries, and all the stuff I learned, it's, just vocabulary. I don't really know anything useful. I'm not really able to help anybody that much. Did I waste my life? I wish I, had a family, a wife and kids. God, I wish I had done something. And then he sees all these happy families, and he's like, you know what? Maybe there's still hope for me. You know what? I'm not going to cash in my chips just yet. So anyways, it's a spectacular painting. I mean, isn't that beautiful? That a turning point moment in his life. Okay, and now you're starting to roll the wheels of Christian redemption. But there's more to the story. It's actually a magnificent play. It's a very famous play. There's a bit of a Book of Job. There's a bit of a Trading Places. There's a bit of a deal with the devil in here. Okay, but anyways, magnificent painting about turning things around. Johann Kraft and Faust on Easter Morning. Okay. Now here's, speaking of Easter morning, here is Keith Green, and he has a song called the Easter Song. Hear the bells ringing, they're singing, you can be born again, and he has risen. I used to love this for squatting. He has risen. So when you come up with the weight, he has risen. He's great. He's like one of the best, if not the best, soul music, not soul music, folk music type Christian singer. His greatest hits. It's great. You just look up Keith Green. He's got tons of great stuff. Okay, and here's a good quote by Martin Luther. Our Lord has written the promise of resurrection in more than books. The promise of resurrection is written in every leaf of springtime. That's good. Goethe, sometimes our fate resembles a fruit tree in winter. Who would think those branches would turn green again and blossom? But we hope it and we know it. That's a good one. What's the best Italian book? Pinocchio. Pinocchio is a masterpiece, and this is the best version of it. This version right here of Pinocchio, illustrated by Roberto Innocenti, and they did a good job translating it. It's a masterpiece. I got a bunch of Italian friends. I grew up around a bunch of Italians. People used to tell me that I look Italian because, my father's Irish. Irish are called mixed. My mother's a Puerto Rican. They're called Spics. So people used to always say, "Ah, Spick and a Mick makes a Dago. Come on, come on, come on, Rogers. You can hang out with us." That's what the Italians used to always say to me. And I liked them. I was around a bunch of them. Some of my best friends were Italian. Okay, so anyways, this is the Pinocchio version. It's really sort of a, youthful boy, mischief, gets himself into all sorts of trouble, and he almost dies. And then he starts to realize how much his parents love him and what they've done for him. And he tries to redeem himself and help and save his parents. And it's a great story. It's a Bildungsroman, coming of age, rite of passage book. Every boy should read this book. Instead of reading the stupid crap they read in colleges that makes all kids hate reading, To Kill a Mockingbird, this was basically they're trying to say you're racist, okay? Then they have Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. This is worst, absolute miserable book. It's like set in a cemetery. It's disgusting and terrible and awful. And then Julius Caesar, which is a very good play, but freshmen in high school can't understand that. That's something that is a challenge to understand in college level. So and then Catcher in the Rye, that like psychopathic piece of crap, J.D. Salinger. It's a worthless book. So what happens is, they teach the children a lesson between the lines that reading is a waste of time, so kids never read. If they read stuff like Pinocchio, it's joyful, it's happy, it's great. And the old-time cartoon version of it was a masterpiece, one of the greatest animated movies ever. Anyways, let's see, maybe I'll show one more thing, or maybe we'll call it at that. I think actually I'll show you one more painting. Here's the Apotheosis of St Ignatius, painted on a ceiling. It's like an incredible display of perspective, virtuosity, the three-dimensionality of this flat painting. It's spectacular. I mean, look at that. That looks three-dimensional. It's a flat painting. It's just an incredible masterpiece. It's by Andrea Pozzo, okay? 1690, okay? That's like the apex of the Baroque art, the zenith of it, okay? 1690 and the 1600s, all the Baroque, okay? So anyways, we'll leave it at that for today. Hope you found it helpful.